Hello everyone. So a few weeks ago I was asked if I could play a one-off gig for a swing band. And I said, yeah, sure, but my music reading is a bit rusty. And they said, that's fine. We'll put some chord sheets in front of you. It's mostly going to be chords. The sax player and the singer will take care of the melody. I said, that's great. Normally when I do dep gigs, I don't get given any music. I have to go and learn it in my own time or write it down, put it on an iPad and so on. So it was an absolute pleasure to get well paid to do a gig that involved reading chord sheets. That's the kind of chord sheets that I had put in front of me. So what I want to do in this video is show you how you can read chord charts. And I don't just mean lyrics with a few chords written down, I mean proper chord charts. And this will mean not only can you get booked for gigs where you can just turn up and read the chord sheet, but also when you're learning songs for bands and you want to write down the chords, it's a lot easier than trying to follow lyrics if you know exactly where the bars and the repeat marks are. This video isn't about reading music. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep it simple and just look at chord charts only. To read music would take a whole series of videos. Also, I'm going to assume that you can already play some basic chords, so we're not going to look at how to play those. That's for other videos as well. So here's a typical example of a chord sheet. This is the jazz standard All of Me. Notice it's got a section A, section B, and then it ends down here on the double bar line. What we're not going to do today is we're not going to look at how you would read the melody, because that would take a whole series of videos on reading music. It's very complex. All we're going to look at is how chord sheets like this are laid out, the structure of them, the repeat marks, how the chords work and so on. We won't do this exact song, we'll make up our own one. So the first thing we notice here is we've got 5 lines, not 6. So this is not tab, this is normal music notation. But you can, what we're going to do today, you can write this on tab as well. We're not going to look at music reading as such, just following chord charts. So the first thing you see on these lines, known as the stave, is some kind of clef, as it's called. Now this is called the treble clef. This is an instruction basically telling you that high-pitched instruments can play what we're about to see, whether it be guitar, violin, and so on. So if you see something like, say, bass clef, that's not for you as a guitarist. If you see drum clef, you've got other things as well, like alto and tenor clef. But we'll ignore that and we'll just stick to treble clef. Now, the next thing you see is a key signature, which tells you what key you're in. But again, we're not reading music today, so that's not going to be of too much concern to us. Then you see something that is interesting to us, the time signature. This basically means there are 4 quarter notes or crotchets per bar of music. This is so common, it's sometimes written as just a giant symbol that looks like a C, which is called common time. But you get other things as well, like you might get 3 quarter notes in the bar, you might get 6 eighth notes and so on. These are quite common, but the most common thing is 4 quarter notes to the bar. So let's write a very simple chord progression that does something like, say, a G chord, and then maybe a D chord, then an E minor chord, and then a C chord. So the first problem we have here is we don't know how long each of these chords lasts. So what we would do is we divide the music up into blocks of 4 beats. So let's say I want a whole 4 beats of G. I then put my bar line here, the G is now done. I move on to the D chord for a bar, E minor for a bar, and the C chord for a whole bar. Okay, so the drummer will be counting out 1, 2, 3, 4, and we play for that duration for each chord. Now, you'll often see something like a rhythm written out for each chord. So we're not going to go too much into reading music here, but a very basic common strumming pattern is something like this. A crotchet and some quavers, or quarter note and eighth notes. This is counted 1, 2, and 3, and 4. But you know what? It doesn't really matter today. You could do the simplest strumming pattern. If you want, you could do 1 chord, 1 strum of each chord, and that's fine. So let's have a quick look at that strumming pattern. It was basically 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4. But any strumming pattern will do. You could just do 1, 2, 3, 4 for now if you want, for every bar. Now, if I have written a strumming pattern now, the last thing I want to do is have to keep writing this for the rest of the song. Most songs don't deviate too far from a particular strumming pattern. I don't want to keep writing this, so I can just use Si mêlé, which is abbreviated to sim in music, and that means similar rhythm throughout. Not necessarily identical, but something similar to this will apply for the rest of the song, unless it says otherwise. Now, rather than leaving the bars empty, we tend to just draw dashes, and these dashes do not represent strums, they represent beats. So there's still 4 beats in a bar, so the drummer's going something like and we're going 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and all the time the drummer's just counting out those beats for us. Now let's say you wanted to repeat this. you would use repeat marks, which look like this: a thick line, a thin line, and 2 dots. And at the other end, thick line, thin line, and 2 dots. And this normally means that you play this line twice, unless it says otherwise. Say if it said ×4, and you do the whole line 4 times. Just be careful when you look at repeat marks that you notice where the first one is. Sometimes it's not at the beginning, it might be here that you're repeating from. Now, it's very easy when you're reading sheets of chord sheets like this to miss repeat marks. You can just kind of go right through it and not even notice them. So there's no shame in doing this, putting little wings on your repeat marks. Even the best musicians in the world will do this to make sure they don't accidentally miss that repeat mark. So let's try this now. Let's try a variation of repeat marks. Let's say on our next line, we've got a repeat mark. Let's say we've got a chord of G for a bar, D for a bar, E minor for a bar, and then let's say we've got C for a bar. And let's say we want to repeat, but when we do the repeat, let's imagine that the second time round, we don't want this C. Let's imagine the second time round, we want a D. Well, we don't really want to write all this out again and waste paper and have lots of sheets to turn over during the song, just for the sake of one bar being different. So what we can do is what's called alternate endings. I can put this symbol, which means the first time round, I'm going to play what's under this little bracket here. I'm going to play the C. But the second time round, I'm not going to play the C. I'm going to jump here and play whatever's under this one. Let's say a chord of D. Okay, so here I've got once round I go G, D, E minor, C. Second time I go G, D, E minor and jump to the D. Okay, I shouldn't leave my bars empty, should I? I should put some little dashes in there just to make sure. Oops. Okay. Now, crazy things can happen with this. We can even see this kind of thing. Let's put a repeat mark there as well. And what this means is I'm going to play this 4 times in total. The first time I'm going to play this ending. The second time round, I'm going to get to here and play the second ending instead. Third time round, back to this ending with the C chord. Fourth time round, I'm not going to play that bar there. I'm going to jump to the D instead. Okay, let's do a new section now. Let's do something like a complete change. Let's say we've got like a bridge section or something with maybe an A minor. Let's put 2 chords in a bar. Why not, just to be different? So that's 2 beats of each, let's say. Again, the strumming is not too important at this point. And then let's say we've got a G chord for a bar. And then let's say, why not do another G for a bar? Okay, now 2 lines means the end of the section. Okay, so that's the end of our bridge or pre-chorus or whatever this might be. And then you might go into the chorus. And let's say we've got something like G for a bar, and then maybe E minor for a bar, maybe C for a bar, and maybe D. And that's our chorus done. Okay, end of the section. So let's imagine that the song's pretty much based on this structure. Let's say that we've got our intro here. It might go around 4 times, and then our verse with its different endings. And let's call this the pre-chorus. By the way, sometimes these things are simply labeled A, section B, C, and so on. I'm going for the kind of more conventional pop style. And then we might have a chorus here. My handwriting's terrible, sorry about that. Okay, now let's imagine that the form of this music just repeats. So basically we're going to go right back to the beginning and do the whole thing again. We don't really want to have to write this out, so we're going to cheat. We're going to put DC, which means da kappa. Kappa means head, like decapitate, remove the head. Okay, da kappa, to the head. In other words, go back to the beginning again. Okay, now be careful. When you go back to the beginning, when you see this DC, da kappa, you go back to the start. But if there's any pickup notes, don't play them. By pickup notes, I mean notes before beat 1. For example, 1, 2, da, 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 bang. Those little pickup notes before beat 1, we don't worry about those. Da kappa means go back to the first beat of the first main bar when the whole band kicks in. Now, what if when we do our repeat back to the beginning, we don't want to do the whole thing? Maybe we don't want to do, maybe we don't want to do the chorus. Maybe we want to jump to something else, like a different kind of chorus. So what we can do is we can put DC al Coda. And that means you're going to go back to the beginning and play all the way through, including all the repeats, and you're going to get through to the coda, which is this symbol here. And I think of this as being like a little wormhole. So when you get to this, you're going to jump into the wormhole and come out down here, okay? And then carry on playing. And you might have a different chorus here that might say have, I don't know, 2 bars of G, C, and D. That might be our new chorus. Let's call it chorus 2. Now, you might wonder, why have I put this little indent here? And I've never actually been entirely sure, but I believe it's because if you don't have this little indentation here, what can happen is you can play through this section, ignore the DCL coda because you're not paying attention, and accidentally carry on here. By having this little gap here, you can spot, something's going on here. What have I missed? Oh, I've missed this little DC here. Now, these lines aren't normally drawn in books, but obviously on my sheet of paper that's been pre-printed, I can't do much about that. So, but I can see there's nothing there. So I know there's an indentation. In fact, you know what? I could even just cross those out. So far, let's recap. We've got this. From the beginning, we play the intro 4 times round. Then we go to the verse and we do the first ending, the second ending, the third ending, and then jump to the 4th ending. Carry on to the pre-chorus, no repeats all the way through. Chorus, no repeats, but we notice this DCL coda. That means go back to the beginning through to the coda. So we're going to go back to the beginning, play our 4 repeats. Verse with all its funny endings, second ending, third ending, 4th ending. Pre-chorus, we get to that coda, jump through like a little wormhole, come out down here and carry on. Now, sometimes instead of DCL coda, you might see something like DSL coda. So let's get rid of that little C there. Let's change that for an S. Sorry, that's not the best looking S, but you get the idea. So dal segno al coda, which means go to the sign, not the beginning, but to the sign, which is normally a little symbol, looks like an S with a line through it and a couple of dots. So let's say, for example, at the end of my chorus, I want to go back to the pre-chorus. And I'm going to play through, it says dal segno al coda. So I'm going to go back to here, get to the coda, jump through and come out down here. Or instead of coda, you might see something like this. Let's get rid of our coda. So now I've rubbed out the coda section and I'm going to change this little bit here at the end for dal segno al fine. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm used to seeing these words and not actually hearing them, but I think I'm saying that right. Dal segno al fine. And that means you go back to the sign and play to the word fine, which means finish. So you're going to go back here and then get to here and then finish at this point. So that's a very basic sheet. There are other things to watch out for. You might get something like this. Let's imagine you've got a bar with this little rectangle hanging from a line. That's a 4-beat rest. That means you do not play. Not only do you not play, make sure you silence your strings or whatever instrument you're playing, because you don't want to hear anything there. It could be the rest of the band are still playing, but you are not. Okay, and then here we're back to the usual strumming pattern. Now you might also have an unusual strumming pattern. Let's say in this pre-chorus, instead of the usual 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and let's say we've just got that pattern there, simple, straight, 1, 2, 3, 4, crotches like that. And let's say that there's another bar of that, another bar of C and D. I could write this down, of course. I could write C, D, and do the same thing, but I could be lazy and just do this symbol, looks like a % sign, and that means do the previous bar again. Okay, and then what about this? What if I've got, let's say, 4 quavers of A minor, and then C, C, D, D, and I want both of these bars again. Now I could put repeat marks around this, but there's another way of doing it. I could do this. I could just do a double % sign, which means repeat both of those bars again. Another thing to look out for is sometimes in music, especially show music where there's lots of stops and starts where the actors do some dialogue, you might suddenly see a section where there's silence for a very long time. And what you don't want to do is have pages and pages of just nothing written down. It's a waste of paper, it's hard to read, you'll be constantly turning pages. So what you might see is something like, let's say that instead of this E minor here, we want 4 bars of silence. You might have something like this. Okay, 4 bars of nothing, and then come back in again on the C. So one last thing we'll look at in this very basic, rudimentary starting point for reading chord sheets is we'll look at dynamic markings. Now, dynamic markings means basically how loud or quiet you play. So some of the ones you see are commonly, you might see a double F, which means very loud, or fortissimo. You might suddenly see an F. Forte means loud. You might have moderately loud, or mezzo forte. And let's say in the verse, you want to go very, very quiet. Double P, which means pianissimo, very quiet. And then maybe here, piano, which means quiet. Maybe over here, mezzo piano, moderately quiet. And the other thing you can do, of course, is let's say you've got the pre-chorus. Let's imagine this is quite loud and you want to get even louder. You could put a crescendo here. Now this coming up to maybe very loud. And maybe you could put a diminuendo, which means gradually getting quieter. You might come down to the chorus, which might be moderately quiet, and then suddenly crescendo to very loud. A couple of bonus points. If you see this little accent above the C chord here, that means you play that louder than everything else. Or you might see a dot underneath the chord, which means play it really short and sharp. Or you might see this funny symbol called a fermata, which is a posh word meaning to hold the note for longer than usual, kind of like a pause. Here's some general notes about chords. I can write a chord like this. This is a G. G minor would be written like this, but it's sometimes written like this, especially in jazz. Looks like a minus sign. You get things like augmented. Say if I've got a C augmented, which could be written like that, or with a plus sign. Sometimes you get things like C major 7 written as that, but it can just be written as this. C triangle 7. Imagine you've got something like a B minor 7 flat 5. You could write B minor 7 flat 5, but sometimes that is written as B half diminished, like that. You might get, say, B diminished 7, written like that, or written like that.
As always, thank you for watching. It's been a while since I've done a video actually, and part of the reason is they take a very long time to make. I've got very little time, and so what motivates me is people that support the channel. So if you could click like and subscribe, that would really help massively. Also, I'd like to hear from you if you've got anything you'd like me to talk about. If you want me to do videos on technique or theory or product reviews, anything like that, I'm always keen to know what people really want from videos. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.